coming. Elizabeth is ready to take questions. She has asked that earlier this week Wanda Barzee appeared before a parole hearing, and she did not show up for that hearing. She does not want to take any questions about that, but you're welcome to ask about why she's here tonight, what she plans for future projects. I think there's been a film or two recently, some books. So we'll turn the time over to you. We'll wrap up at 5:30.
Why don't you tell us about your new book that has come out this year?
Sure, I'm happy to. So my new book just came out at the end of March. It's called Where There's Hope. And I decided to write it because as I go around speaking, I often hold a lot of question and answer sessions. And a lot of the questions that I was getting, they were not like the nitty-gritty detailed questions about what happened to me. They were more bigger, I'd say deeper questions. And I kept getting them asked over and over again, like, have you forgiven your captors? How do you deal with anger? How have you moved forward? Where do you find your hope? Those sort of bigger overarching questions. And so after I wrote my first book, I kind of said, okay, that's it. Like, I'm done. I've been there. I don't need to do that anymore. And then as I continued doing this, I kept being asked all these questions. I started thinking, well, if I ever wrote a book again, maybe I'd try to answer these questions. But then I thought, how could I, just me, answer these questions? That sounds a bit presumptuous because I certainly don't know everything about forgiveness or hope or anger. And so then I thought, and besides that, not everyone's going to feel a connection with me that they might with other people. So I thought it would be even better if I could go out and find other individuals who have overcome their own tragedies, have overcome their own stories, and moved on. And that's really what the book turned into. So it is my narrative throughout the book, but I've gone out and I've interviewed so many incredible, amazing individuals and gotten their stories and their advice and their thoughts on anger and forgiveness and hope and frustration and pain. And now that, it's done and it's out, I just couldn't be prouder of how it turned out.
What was it like to incorporate other survivors of different backgrounds into your book?
It was really interesting because I've been on the interviewee side more times than I can count, but then all of a sudden kind of having this role reversal where I'm going out and I'm asking the questions, I found myself constantly kind of trying to find that balance of making sure that I was clear and that I got their story and that the questions that I needed answered were answered, but at the same time without being insensitive and without being just bullheaded and brutal, because I've been there too, and I know what it's like to be on that receiving end, and it's not nice.
Elizabeth, I have a question.
Yeah.
So I'm Kelsey with the Post-Register, and I was just wondering, so I saw that you had a child last year, right?
Yes.
In 2017.
Yeah.
So, and you have 2 children, correct? So how do you balance your family life with your activism?
That is a good question. I'm still working on the answer. I still don't know the answer. We just spent like the last week just camping in a tent for 7 days.
Really?
With my 3-year-old and my 1-year-old. And now I'm paying the consequences of that. But, oh, thank you. I don't know, I try to make sure that my children know I'm there for them always, that they're the most important thing in the world for me. I mean, when I'm at home, I try to be 100% home for them. I try to make sure that I'm not gone for days and days and days at a time. So I do try to make sure that I am home more than I'm away, and that when I'm home, I really am there. I'm not just like glued to my phone or stuck on conference calls, because that would be a pretty easy thing to do.
Do they often go with you when you're traveling?
They used to, but as they've gotten older and the traveling was messing up nap schedules, that was leading to a lot of meltdowns, and not just on their side.
Why have you decided to continue to share your story, even though you've expressed that it's been difficult to do throughout the years?
Well, when I first came home, I didn't start speaking the next day. I didn't start speaking the next year. It really was until after the trial, and the trial was 8 years after I got home. And during those 8 years, I think that was really important for me to go back to high school, go to college, go experience some more life, kind of get a better idea of what I wanted to do. And then when I came back and I started thinking about what did I really want to do in my life, I knew that I wanted to do something that was meaningful. I knew that I wanted to do something that was going to make a difference. And I had been, I wouldn't say heavily involved, but I'd say mildly, moderately involved over the years, helping with certain bills and legislation. And when I started thinking about it, I just knew that I had an opportunity to make a difference and that I could set my own boundaries, and I only needed to talk about what I felt comfortable sharing, and that I didn't have to share anymore, and I didn't have to talk about anything more that made me feel uncomfortable. And so that's kind of how I have always, I guess, navigated my way through life since I started speaking and writing books and ending up here.
You've been to Idaho several times before. What are some things that people can expect from your visit today if they've never seen you speak before?
I realize that every single one of us has a story, and I think to some degree we're all searching for the same things. How do we overcome our problems? How do we have happiness in our life? How do we deal with anger? How do we find forgiveness? How do we find hope? I do not answer all those questions, but I do my best, and I try to help. I hope whoever comes and listens tonight, no matter what their story is or what their struggle is at the end of the night, that they feel inspired and encouraged that they can keep going.
Has your experience sharing that with others helped you find more hope yourself?
Sometimes yes, and sometimes no. I've had a lot of good experiences, but I've also, I've just the sheer volume of people that I've met who have disclosed their abuse to me has been staggering, and that's not always, just to hear so many other people's stories of abuse and sexual violence, it can be overwhelming to realize that it is such a prevalent problem in today's society, and no matter how nice of a town or city you think you live in, it's there. And to think that really kind of only now social change is starting to come about, it's pretty discouraging.
What's your definition of a survivor, and what are some new ways that you have learned to cope with your experience?
My definition of a survivor, well, I guess in my mind it's just someone who didn't give up, someone who kept going. Doesn't mean they had to come out like glamorous or beautiful or star-studded, but they kept going even when things got hard, even when things seemed like everything was falling apart around them, and they kept going to the bitter end, even if maybe their end wasn't the end of what was going on, but they kept going. And so I think that's my description or definition of a survivor. And I don't think it's a bad thing to be a survivor. I think it means you're strong. I think it means that you didn't crumble. I think it means that, I'm very proud to call myself a survivor. And, sorry, what was the other part of your question?
What are some new ways that you've learned to cope since your experience?
So when I got home, my parents, they offered any and every kind of therapy under the sun to me. They said, we'll support you in whatever you want. And there were a couple of things that happened right after I got home that made me immediately not want to speak to a therapist and not want to speak to a psychiatrist. And I think I did have a pretty negative outlook on what therapy was, but I also think it was a pretty ignorant, I guess, knowledge of what therapy really was. And so my parents, they were panicked. So like, she doesn't want to speak, like, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? So they went and they started seeing a therapist, and their therapist said, it's okay, like, don't panic, it's all right. You know, there will come a time when she probably will want to talk about it, or when, you know, she needs to deal with it. And at that point, you just make sure that you're in a place to listen, make sure that you're in a place to be there for her, and you're in a place to support her. And if, you know, at that point in time she wants to seek out therapy, then make sure that you are there to help her make that transition. So my parents played a huge part in helping me to get where I am today, but I also found, like, I don't think there's a formula for everyone. Like, I don't think you can say, okay, like, medication plus like twice a week clinical counseling equals happiness. I think you have to find what's right for you, and that might work for lots of people, and that's great, that's fantastic. Like, I am actually a fan and a supporter of therapy. I do think it is a good thing, but that wasn't what I needed. And so I have found a lot of my therapy by being outside, I love to go horseback riding. That always was very therapeutic for me. Now I've got 3 dogs, and they're crazy, but I find it pretty therapeutic to take them out running. And we like what I like, so I assume my dogs like it. But I like to go trail running. There's some trails close to my house, and so that's always very therapeutic and just, I'd say, almost cleansing for me. And I find music very therapeutic for me. I grew up playing the harp. I'm a bit embarrassed to say we moved back in like January, and I've only uncovered my harp once and tried to play it, so I should probably be better about that. But that's also been a big influence in my life.
All right. Well, thank you all for coming.
All right, great, thank you.